Hello,
everybody,
and
welcome
back
to
another
episode
of
The
Cup
Brought
to
You
by
Cup
of
Hemlock.
Theatre.
I
Am
your
host
for
this
episode
Jillian,
Robinson,
associate
producer,
of
Cup
Hemlock
Hemlock,
Theatre.
and
Ryan,
Borochovitz,
our
co-artistic
producer, is
joining
me.
today.
And
We
are
going
to
discuss
the
show
Unwritten
the
Improv
show
brought
to
you
by
YPT.
Young
People's.
Theater.
Yeah, okay, that was good. I think let's close out. Let's see scene there. Hello, listeners, viewers. Welcome back to another episode of the Cup Duet Reviews. Yes, I'm Jillian Robinson. You are associate artistic producer. I am joined by Ryan Borochovitz, one of our co-artistic producers. I love how I'm just like in speed up script land now.
Well, you could have saved a lot of time by just letting you do that.
Ryan and I just did one of the games that was presented today as part of Unwritten, the Improv show, which is a show happening right now at the Ada Slate stage at Young People's Theatre. It's happening now until May 16th. It is directed by Herbie Barnes, and it stars three phenomenal improvers, Tim Blair, Lisa Merchant, and Paloma Nunez. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that show today.
Yeah. Fantastic. But before we do,
Yes.
What's
in
your... Oh, well, I'm glad you asked.
Yeah,
What's in my cup? I have just a nice piping hot cup of coffee, but it's in my The Cup Cup, the show
Yes.
you are currently watching. What about you? Is there anything whimsical in your cup today?
Yeah, actually, I have my unicorn mug today, also with some butter pecan coffee, and it has "Don't Stop Believing" motto on it. And we will chat about today one of the exercises in the show. They had like a little box of mottos that they could like pull from a hat. So I thought that was fitting. And also Paloma used a prop as a unicorn horn today. So I was like, look at that. 2 birds with 1 stone. 2 hooves with 1 majestical creature. I don't know where I'm going with that. But I do know that I am going to take a sip out of my... Oh, this is a bowl. Oh, but this is a cup. This is a bowl that will be a cup. This prop that is a bowl, I'm saying, is a cup.
Because you're using your imagination to stretch objects into other ideas or concepts.
Exactly.
And what's in your bowl cup?
Just some water. Hydration station.
Nice.
I will not be licking the water out like a cat or a dog. I will just be sipping out of the bowl.
That's what makes it a cup, as opposed to a bowl.
Okay, as we quirkily mosey along this episode, this show was so fun. Just like right out the gate, Ryan and I were having a hoot at the back of the theater, just absolutely, along for the whimsical ride that is Unwritten, the Improv show. So before we kind of go into the show that we saw today, I'll kind of just map out, the whole vibe of what this installment of Young People's Theatre, it's actually their final show of this year's season. So that's super exciting. So
before you get into it, though, I think we should just kind of mention at the outset that this episode will not have a pre-spoiler, post-spoiler segments. Being an improv show, there's pretty much nothing that we could spoil. When you go on a different day from us, you will see a completely different show. We will be talking about the basic structure of the piece, which I assume is somewhat reproducible, but the jokes and narratives will all be completely different, so you don't have to worry about stopping watching after a certain point to avoid spoiling the show. I don't even know how we could if we tried.
Correct.
Sorry, continue.
That's okay. No, that's perfect, because now we're like fully in the episode. Bells and whistles and all.
It's all spoilers from here, or not.
Okay, so yes, so the show is Unwritten, the improv show, and it essentially is exactly that. So Tim Blair, Lisa Merchant, and Paloma Nunez are our three performers, and they come out onto the stage that is dressed with multiple costume pieces, set pieces. A lot of the set pieces were Easter eggs that Ryan and I kind of saw from The Fixing Girl and maybe some peppering in of truth, other YPT shows that happened. So yeah, kind of just like an improv actors playground essentially. And they come out to the stage and they say exactly what we've said. Like, this show is improv. We're going to kind of go through some games and instances with each other. And obviously we will take audience suggestions to kind of carry us along. And yeah, so the three of them. So I'll also just kind of come right out the gate. This is at Young People's Theatre. And obviously the demographic of Young People's Theatre is anywhere between like newborn up until any age group, but predominantly newborn to like teenager are usually the audience demographic. And so Ryan and I saw a morning show, and our demographic around us were like preteens and teens. So I would say like anywhere from like grades possibly like 3 to even like high school, grade 9, 10. So that was really cool to kind of be in the audience with some older kids. So yeah, so Paloma, Tim, Lisa come out and basically say, we're going to just mosey on through an improv show and offer suggestions. So Ryan and I chatted post show. Basically, what the show that we saw today, there was about 3 sort of like game shells, I guess I'll call them, that the 3 performers sort of 3 different scenarios that we got to go along as audience members. So one of them was the traditional, here's a prop, like taken out of a box, and what do you do with said prop? So a lot of people who've seen like the show Whose Line Is It Anyway, or have done improv classes themselves. So they sort of cycled through a couple props, and each of them, some of you probably know how this game works, right? Where on the fly, it can be anything you want, like a bowl becoming a cup. That's not really stretching imagination too far, but you know where I'm going with this. The second sort of game shell was they asked the audience what summer jobs, if anyone wanted a summer job, what would you like? And they took that idea and they did this thing called ping pong, which was super cool, where Tim was in the middle and then Lisa and Paloma were on opposite sides. When Tim was with Lisa, they had to talk with and at each other.
At the same time. Saying the same word. We're bad at this. They're much better than we are.
Also, is this syncing up? We're on Zoom. I don't know, but Ryan, that was really good.
We did our best.
Cheers. And then, okay, so Tim would go to Lisa. They would be saying the same words at the same time. And then when he was with Paloma, they would have to say what we did, the exercise at the top of this episode, every other word. And they brought this person through an interview of being a camp counselor lifeguard, which was like super cool. And again, the content of like our demographic, the audience watching this, like it was just, it was really funny, like seeing the actors up on their feet go through all of that. So game shell 3 was something called the principal's office. So at this point, Paloma left the auditorium and Lisa and Tim vetted the audience and asked 3 things. What's one thing that you could get in, like as annoying, you could get in trouble for? So the audience and our show offered clicking of a pen. Then it was name a famous celebrity or character. Our audience offered Kevin Hart. And then the last one was, remind me, Ryan.
A location.
Location, correct. And we decided as an audience, the Louvre. So then Paloma came back in and took on the persona of like this mischievous kid who's brought into the principal's office. Tabitha was our kid. And then through Tim and Lisa offering sort of like clued questions or statements, it was up to Paloma to try to decipher kind of like a clue game, right? Like, what did I do? Who was I with and where was I? And then as the audience, we were allowed to like, ooh, if Paloma was close, and we were encouraged to cheer when she got it. So that was super fun as well. Yeah. Also watching this too, I'm like, I'm going to take those exercises and put it in my own actor toolbox. Thank you. So funnily enough, there's a 4th game shell that Ryan and I forgot, but also we don't know how to count clearly, but it's funny because math was also a theme in this show. So we're just going to
In
say
this next game shell.
this next game show, there was a sound effect that happened. It was like, yep. And each actor had a part of their body that they had to lead with. And then they had to, when they heard the sound effect, they had to change into another actor's character. And tutoring was the suggestion.
Yeah.
Right. That was like, what's another job that you might want to do this
Sure,
summer?
yeah.
So one of our students said tutoring. So that was it. Right. That's how we got into what is the environment. And then each actor got a part of their body part that they had to sort of lead with. So then we established there was a tutor, a student, and then a second student. But then again, as the sound effect rang, they all had to switch and take on each other. So it was so lovely because it's like a character cocktail. It's like someone starts a character and then another body will take over that character, right? So they might add something or they might, go a different direction. And so it's a really lovely thing to watch of like, there's a scene being created, but then also there's characters that are just like pivoting and like going left, right, and sideways. Like it's just, yeah, that was a super treat. So that was shell 4. So there was 4 shells that sort of built us up to the final back half of the show was a 1-act show that, again, they took a suggestion of where we were at. So our show, we were at a Costco. And then there was suggestion boxes placed around the stage that were labeled like book titles or like school mottos or like school mascots, professions. And these suggestions that were in these boxes were actually given by the students in the schools that were present for this performance. So
in advance of the show.
In advance of the show, exactly.
Out already, yeah.
Yeah. So that was like a cool, like bringing the audience once again, like in on the action, quite literally. And hearing the kids, like if their comment was read or something, you'd actually hear the kids' reaction, like, oh my gosh, like I wrote that or something, or laughing. And then, yeah, so they took us through this 1-act show where each of them embodied like specific characters. So that was like a kind of cool, like, again, we built using the 4 game shells to prep the actors and prep the audience for this sort of like 1-act
main event kind of thing.
Main event, exactly. Okay, I'm going to pass the torch to you, Ryan. I feel like that did a good job of encapsulating what we
thorough
saw.
Description. So while I imagine that anytime anyone watching this sees a later show of this, it'll be very similar patterns, I assume. Maybe they'll swap out one of the game shells for a different thing, but that's kind of, we have a few different simpler improv games that then lead us to a long form sort of self-contained story that takes up the latter half of the show. Yeah, I think you've summed it up all pretty well. General impressions, this is a really fun time. I think it's interesting. What I think this show does really well is that, yes, it is just 3 very skilled improvisers just doing improv for us. But because the target demographic is for young kids, teenage, and maybe even younger, I think the show is very much designed at maybe you've never seen improv before. Let us show you what it entails. Yeah. It's not just that we're great improvisers, will entertain you for the length of this show. It's we are teaching you about improv, how to do improv. That whole first segment, or the first few segments, those game shells, as you called them, was just these are games that you can play with your friends. They didn't necessarily put it in that language, but I'm sure a lot of these kids at recess will probably want to go off and try some of these games, see if they can have some fun, and maybe even start like an improv team at their school if there isn't one, or they're inspired now to join one if they've seen how fun it could be. So I think, there very much is an educational element to it, but the education is just, here's a fun theater thing that will help you with your social skills and your performance and your comedy, and you can make friends and have a good time doing it. And then let us entertain you with, now that you've seen the basic skills of it, here's the full potential of what can be done with the skill set. So I thought it really did an excellent job at that. Yeah, please continue.
Well, even, to just jump on that, and in the question and answer sessions that we bared witness to at the end there, like Loma actually asked that question posed that question to the audience. I think it was her, maybe it was Tim, of just like, in the long form improv 1-act that we did, what were some of the exercises that we did use in the game shells that were used in there? And that was really lovely to see, like the students respond to that, and call back to it. And even like Paloma saying the statement that, a lot of the times in improv, it's you part of like what makes it great is you fail. Like failure is going to happen. And it's like, how do you, and it's the moments where like the actors are working through a failed moment or like a tough bit and how they dig each other out. Like that's where the comedy happens. That's where the magic happens. So yeah, it was really lovely. Like I love that YPT does their Q&As after all of their shows. I think it's super informative and it's really talk about dissolving that fourth wall. Like it really is like art in conversation with the students. But for this show in particular too, it was like absolutely like, okay, this is theater as educational tool to the max because
Mhm.
like you just said it, Ryan, they are potentially introducing this art form to some of the students or posing it kind of like that. And yeah, the students are leaving with some skills to
Mhm.
utilize in art if that's what they want to pursue, but also just in life and encouraging us all to be weird and funny and make mistakes and pivot and throw something in. And it's hilarious. Like there was a bit in our thing where again, this is super specific, but like the Costco we were at, there was like a book fair happening inside the Costco. And Tim and Lisa were in a car driving to this loading dock to drop off the books that came in. And then Paloma just rides in with a cowboy hat and a horse and is like, where do I park my horse at this Costco? And I cackled because I'm like, it's so funny. Like I love watching improv where you have actors that will just pop in an outlandish offer and then just being like, yep. And then that's she's just like, oh, thanks for the ride in the back of your pickup truck. I'm gonna go park my horse.
Yeah.
I'm like,
And that character never came back. Like throughout that whole one act,
oh,
they did a good
Dale.
job of kind of,
Yeah,
yeah, Dale.
Dale just like, as far as we know, did Dale make it to the book fair? I don't know, but I want to know
Dale
about
just,
Dale. Where's
yeah.
Dale?
Well, but and I think that's funny. Like they did make a concerted effort in that one act to try to have like, individual scenes that introduce characters,
Mhm.
and then the ones that stuck sort of came back, and we tried to have some sort of fulfillment of their narrative. Maybe not arcs. Arcs might be
Yeah,
too grandiose a way of looking at it, but trying to pick up the pieces of this character story until we feel like we've reached some sort of conclusion. They even ended it with like the based on a true story type of white text on black screen epilogue, sort of
yeah,
each one narrating what happened to their character after. But yeah, like I think Dale is a perfect example of that's a character that like there's really no more story you can do with this one. But we tried something, it was fun, made an
yeah,
appearance here, got a good laugh. But yeah, it's just a little too far from the rest of it. And like it's interesting because the suggestions it's funny because so much of the Costco became about the book fair simply because they picked book fair out of one of the boxes. It was some,
yeah.
I forget what box that was labeled as, but it was some sort of maybe like school event or something
Hmm.
you would attend. But yeah, they were at the like, sample table at the Costco, which makes sense as the, the place you would have a Costco scene is. And then those characters are forced to mention that we financed this operation with our book fair.
Yeah,
And then so when the next scene introduced that I have the pickup truck, I'm bringing the books, suddenly the book fair, oh, okay, I guess this is more integral to what started as a Costco scene is it's
yeah,
about. But what I liked about that is they didn't just then run with the book fair of like, okay, I guess this is, even though so much of it is still centered around the book fair, and our character Martha Galapagos, the Taylor Swift book plagiarist, was a prominently featured, played by Paloma. So funny.
yeah,
But it's still, they found ways of bringing it back to the Costco, going back to the sample table and making sure that, okay, we didn't just say, oh, we like book fair more than we like Costco, so now it's a book fair scene. They
yeah.
found ways of playing with all the suggestions and trying very hard, not always succeeding, but the failure is part of the fun, is the point
Definitely, yeah.
of weaving these things together very well.
Speaking of weaving things together, I want to pick up on what we said about how, yes, this is like educational from like an improv theatrical lens, but then also we've dropped Paloma in a lot. I
Mhm.
want to just talk about Paloma for a hot second. I've seen her perform in various shows throughout the city and super hilarious and just such a clicked in, phenomenal improviser. Paloma, if you're listening, like hats off to you. But again, I just think like this morning, the show that Ryan and I saw was a morning show. And I just like loved watching her work too, with knowing that like this is an educational tool potentially as well. And like the way that she weaved and pivoted through all of the game shells and the one act, I think she dropped in a lot of like pillars of improv. Like, so, you could tell always she was like actively listening, which obviously we know that's like number one thing at being an improviser, and offering when she could offer, but also like absorbing when she needed to absorb from either Lisa or Tim. She was very connected to the audience and like grounded and taking suggestions and like whimsically like throwing them on their feet or like, so I love that. Also, when we were in the one act, like she did the thing where, okay, maybe a moment is dipping down in what we've been. So now I'm going to just restart this scene with this character. Like that's how Martha Galapagos was born, right? She was just off to another side of the stage and just like, bam, just was like, and now we're doing this. And then in part of that, bam, there was also a moment where her physicality like really punched. Like one time she just like, she crawled onto the stage, like through like a, like part of a set piece, or, you know, she got really like emotional or like, and just popped in like other theatrical realms to just like round out the bare bones of what like an improviser should do. And so, and then, and also like flipped between characters. But then when she flipped and when she was in like a particular character, we knew, okay, this is the anatomy of this character, or this is how this character exudes. So I just thought, again, like to do a morning show too, like to have all of like the actor, improviser, you know, synapses going everywhere, but then also realizing like you are doing this for like kids and teens. So there's also a layer of censorship-ish, right? Because improv, especially for adults, like it can get a bit raunchy, but it's like, okay, knowing this audience, like how far should you go? Also, she was very like with this sort of like pop culture that these kids might be aware of as well. Tim also, I noticed that as well, like was picking up. But I just kind of wanted to use Paloma as like a really good, again, all three of these performers were brilliant in their chemistry and yeah, exactly. And building off of each other were great, but just kind of using Paloma as this sort of vehicle to explain all of the different sort of pillars of improv and the art craft that kind of have to be boiling on the same stove in order to like fully round out a really good grounded improv show, in my opinion. So
yeah,
yeah.
I'll even add to that just well, since we're all three performers, Tim, Lisa, Paloma, they were all fantastic. But since you were going all on about Paloma for a moment ago, I will say she did have what became my favorite line or moment in the entire show, which was, and you're probably thinking of the same one as I am, but it was in the game, the principal's office game, where she was the one who had to figure out what the three kind of like, think of it like Clue, where it's like, where in the end, when she finally figured it out, it was, I was clicking my pen with Kevin Hart in the loop. But that's like, oh, you opened the envelope, you got it correctly, like in Clue. But the favorite moment in probably the whole show was when she thought she figured out the location because she said something about a museum, and we in the audience were like, "Ooh," to signal to her that she's close. And then she's like, "Oh, museum, like the ROM." She said, like, turned to the audience, like, so confident that she got it. And then when we didn't like cheer for her success, it was like, "Oh, never mind."
Yeah.
Like it was just like such a perfect pivot of, I figured it out. Oh, never mind. And that encapsulated this like, failure is good, failure is entertaining,
Yeah.
trying and seeing what works. Like it was just such
Yeah.
a perfect moment, and probably got, at least for me, the biggest laugh in the whole show. So
Definitely.
yeah.
Also, another thing I want to mention too, which is I think is paramount for improv too, is like textured specificity. And what I mean by that is like, as the idea like hits you as the actor or as the improviser, like adding like weird texture to it, or weird and relatable texture. And so I wanted to talk about, there's a moment when it was Captain Booker, who was a character that Tim played to lock up Martha Galapagos for being a Taylor Swift plagiarizer. And they were talking about, Martha was saying how she was a failed auto technician, and that's why she sort of took on this new career as an author. And then they started, Captain Booker was relating to that as well. And they started talking about like how cars are so confusing and like, why do cars use oil or whatever? And then Paloma, this I think gets my shout out for the favorite line. She said, yeah, and why is the antifreeze such a cool color? I just, because it's so true. Like antifreeze is like this like purple, or like sometimes it's blue too, but like it's always like this like fluorescent effervescent, and like I know when I pour that into my car, I'm like, this is really cool. Into
And
my
she pointed at the green
already
on her.
lime green car.
Oh,
Oh, a
something happened to
different
you.
bowl with water. That's
How
the same
whimsical.
color of the car that I just mentioned. That was not planned. Um, but yeah, I just, again, specificity and texture to an idea and to a moment
Mhm.
um, that can just offer like a weird specificity or like a relatable specificity. When that happens, when I'm watching improv, I die laughing because I also just know too, like as a performer, it's like you're wanting to respond in time and in situation of what the scene is, but like to add the extra layer of like, whoa, like did I just say that? Or like, okay, what if I like there's very little room to like actually flesh out your thoughts. So when they just come out, like the antifreeze being a fun color was just like chef's kiss, like such a fun moment for me.
Nice. Yeah, no, it was a great time. Yeah, like we could go on and on about little specific things that made us laugh, but you know, part of that I guess is noble of us because we're documenting this one ephemeral performance that'll never be replicated again. But like, I don't know, but I wonder how helpful it is to people listening to just hear about all these jokes that they're never going to see. We can't really do them justice by trying to relay them here. In general, I just think people should check this out. If you like improv, this is a really solid improv show with three excellent performers, really good scaffolding holding it all together. If this is a genre you like, if you're in for a good time, and if it's one that you've maybe had mixed feelings about, maybe give this one a try because having it oriented towards kids might make you appreciate it from a different angle. Experiencing it with a school group like we did might make you kind of get some of their energy and enthusiasm and
Totally.
excitement in a way that you maybe never had if you're like in an adult improv bar and you haven't necessarily been as enamored with that energy, or if it was a different vibe. I think this is just like, yeah, a really great show. If you have
Totally.
kids, certainly bring them to this. I think it's a really, yeah, a great way to expose them to this. Yeah, I was a real improv kid personally. In fact, when I was 12 going on 13 and about to have my bar mitzvah, I was a kid who did not like dancing and loud music. So I had an improv troupe perform at my bar mitzvah. So
So
this
fun.
was, yeah, this was fun. Yeah, I always tried to start an improv team at my high school, but could never get enough people on board. So drat, but oh
Hey,
well, but
I mean,
it's
you
so
can start
nice.
now. Why
Yeah,
not?
I guess I could. Yeah, it's
Yes,
never too late. I just learned so many new skills and techniques that I can
yes, you
now
did.
apply to it.
Yeah. I think also just picking up what you said there too, like even going to see this as like a performer and actor myself, and I love kind of acting in all genres, but like comedy is always like near and dear to my heart as well. And having done a lot of like pantos, like super silly, outlandish energy is my bowl of tea. So this was just such a treat. I think like artists definitely should go see this show because like it is kind of bringing you back to like the rudiments of like improv, of theater school, of like the funsy whimsiness of being a performer and being an actor. And like I think because like Ryan, you mentioned too, like a lot of people who might have experience with improv shows, like they're seeing them at like bars or like comedy clubs or something, which is lovely environments as well, but there is a little bit more of like a relaxed environment or sort of like a not so much of a shell potentially, whereas which was really neat watching this show as a performer because it is used as an educational tool. um it seemed like our cast members were, it's almost like there was more responsibility or more like there had to be a little bit more of like ownership and structure to what improv is because it was sort of, it's not just this is a show, this is like an educational tool. So I also, again, watching and observing and bearing witness as an audience member, but an actor, it was like I was watching a master class, right? Because it's like these improvisers, they have to be on. And obviously, yeah, they're going to ebb and flow. There's going to be moments that fall flat. There's going to be these lovely little failures that they have to dig out of. But I was like sitting at the edge of my seat the whole time because I was like, this is really cool. I get to see like three astonishing improvisers from our city that have had like years and years and years experience of this particular art form. And yeah, like I want to go again. Like I want to go again.
Yeah.
I want to bring like other artists or like
It'll be
adults too.
different every time. So yeah, there's no reason to not go again because yeah,
Yeah.
you're in for another good show. And you might notice like some things in the scaffolding that have changed, like, oh, that's interesting that they don't just repeat these same few games every time. Or maybe you do, but it'll be completely different suggestions, different scenes. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I encourage people to check it out.
Definitely. And just kind of want to use this space too. Like, thank you again, Young People's Theater, for just, again, hey, this is going back to one of our prop games for hitting it out of the park, Young People's Theater. There was a bit where Lisa and Paloma had to, embody like a pitcher and a bat. And there was a
Spitting
fun
on the
little
ball a little too
spitting on the
much.
ball and a fun little a blue jay, throwing some blue jay shade. But yeah, Young People's Theater, you hit it out of the park again. Like Ryan and I have so much fun seeing your shows.
A
Just
varied season this has been.
varied
Yeah.
season and inspiring and impactful and necessary and totally garnered for young audience members, but also spanning all the way up until like, from 0 to 99. You know what I mean? Like everybody gets something out of YPT shows. And especially, like this show in particular, like so invigorating as an artist. And then, Bouge de la, the toured company that came in on the Ada Slate stage, that like channeled inner child. And then, you had The Fixing Girl, which was like nostalgia and core memories and family. And then we had Truth, which is like, material that is necessary and political and lifting stories and voices that need to be heard. Like just such a varied, wonderful season.
It's a
Hitting,
wonderful season.
hey, it's a Wonderful Life. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yes, and
like, yes, and hitting as they kind of went through the whole kaleidoscope that was YPT season, like all multiple genres and like workings of theater were on the stage too. And so, yeah, varied across the board, across the boards.
Hey.
So on that note, yes, catch Unwritten, the improv show that's happening on the Ada Slate stage at Young People's Theater. It's happening now until May 16th. It's directed by Herbie Barnes and it stars Tim Blair, Lisa Merchant, and Paloma Nunez. We will pop all this information down below. You do not want to miss out, once again, on a wonderful YPT show. So on that note, Ryan, where can friends find and follow you this spring and beyond?
No need to find and follow me personally because I'm not that interesting. But if you like me and my theater thoughts, you can tend to find all of them here on Cup of Hemlock Theatre. That's the show you're watching right now. Cup of Hemlock Theatre on YouTube, Cup of Hemlock Theatre podcast in the podcast places, at COH Theatre on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things, and check out some of those other YPT episodes we've done because we've had a lot of fun with the season and had many thoughts to share and say. So enjoy all that. How about you, you talented and prolific actor person? Where can people follow you, see you on a stage? What's happening to your bowl?
Sorry, I found another bowl, a pink one.
Wow. How is it, one bowl or multiple bowls?
I don't know. You'll never know.
People listening to this as a podcast have no idea what we're talking about. They're just like, what? Who are these bowls?
I had a turquoise bowl, a green bowl, and a raspberry bowl. Not a bowl of raspberries, a raspberry colored bowl that I used as cups for.
You could put raspberries in it if you want, but then you'd have
Fair.
trouble spotting them. Like, where do they go?
Exactly. Okay, we're going back on track. Yes, people can find and follow me and my quirkiness at Jillian.Robinson96. That's my artist Instagram account. At time of episode release, I am just about to go into Tech Week for the show A Goat, a Ghost, and a Guinness, which is the Flair Productions production for this spring. It's happening at the Al Green Theater, May 16th to the 19th. So the long weekend, grab your tickets to that. Once again, thank you, Young People's Theater, for providing phenomenal pieces for the city this season and allowing Ryan and I to unpack our boxes and shapes
and thinking
thoughts
outside
and
of
memories. Them. Yes. Yeah. Cheers. Cheers to that. Get on out there, enjoying some fresh sunshine, and we'll see you next time on the Cup.
Cheers.
Cheers.